A look at the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Let's speak to Shaina Low, the communications advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council, and she's joining us from Amman in Jordan. Shaina, thank you so much for speaking to us. We know how desperate the humanitarian crisis is right now. Fears of famine are again imminent. It feels every time that we talk about this, it's just getting worse than even before the ceasefire deal came into place. Now we're getting reports that 70% of Gaza's water supply has been cut off. Water is literally life. It is what we need to survive. How is this now going to further worsen what's already going on there?
Well, of course, we're seeing already increases in public health crisis, where we're seeing that waterborne illnesses from people drinking unsanitary water are on the rise. In addition, of course, to the constraints that the medical sector is facing handling all of the injuries due to the hostilities. And so we're continuing to see that the conditions are getting worse and worse. Palestinians are surviving on far less than the daily minimum recommended average standards. And we know that as supplies rapidly dwindle, it's not just about the supply lines, the pipelines that feed directly into Gaza, but it's also about the fuel that is needed to run desalination pumps, that's needed to move trucked water from place to place. As that runs out, we're going to see less and less clean and safe water for people to drink.
Is there any sort of estimation from groups like yours and other aid organizations working in Gaza as to how long people will have any access to not just water, but of course to food and to medical supplies? Because the blockade is just continuing, no end in sight to that.
It has been a complete siege for well over a month now, and supplies are indeed rapidly dwindling. We know that the UN announced that they expect that they'll have to suspend food distributions within the week. We're already facing shortages of supplies, not just food and water and medicine, but also shelter supplies. We've had 400,000 people displaced since Israel broke the ceasefire just a few weeks ago, and no shelter supplies have gotten in. There are close to 60,000 tents sitting just outside of Gaza and Egypt waiting to enter and provide temporary housing to people who have been displaced. But supplies are rapidly dwindling. There's very little to give. And often we're facing issues as well where we can't access the warehouses where we have the last of our supplies due to the insecurity, due to the fact that we cannot get assurances from Israel that our staff can safely access those stocks.
So the aid is there, it's on the border, it just needs to actually enter Gaza. But because of that aid obviously not reaching the people who need it most, one of the groups most affected are children, as always. And often when we do our live crossings to our reporters in Gaza, the images behind him are of little children walking, often alone. And it's incredibly sad to watch that every time, even though we've been covering this for 18 months. And when you think of the long-term impact on such small children, not just the physical impact, but the mental and emotional. Many people say Gazans don't have, they're currently just living through a trauma that is never ending right now.
Well, I was just in touch earlier today with our colleagues from our education team in Gaza who have had to really suspend almost all of our programming because our staff, we cannot send our staff to the temporary learning centers that we had helped to establish both before and during the ceasefire. And it's really heartbreaking to think about these children who have been deprived of education. This is the second school year without any meaningful education, and the limited support that we were able to provide, helping with psychosocial support, helping children to cope with the trauma. It's all gone to waste because children are being re-traumatized. Children should not be worrying about whether they will survive airstrikes. They should not be worrying about where they will get their next meal or if they will get their next meal. Half of Gaza's population are children, and they should be focused on their futures, thinking about the opportunities in front of them and not worrying if they'll live to see the next day.
Just completely unimaginable and yet a reality for thousands of children in Gaza. Shaina Low from the Norwegian Refugee Council, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you.